Hello and welcome to this week's video on My Hero Academia. This week I'm reviewing episode 2 of volume 4 of Vigilantes. You know how this works by now. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below, and you will be added in next week's show. Whilst you're there, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants it to do, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Support your local small content creator today. It will do them a power of good. Now on to the review, and we start off as we always do with the positives and the headline positives for this week's review. This was a light and bright episode. Very much welcome after the previous episode, with a kind of goofy tone to it that is rather reminiscent of the previous season, albeit this week with a little bit more purpose. This purpose being so as we can spend a little bit more time with Popstep and to get an opportunity to really delve deeper into her character and her personality more. This is the Popstep episode, the first of what feels like it's going to be a Popstep focused double bill, getting a deeper dive into who she is and what makes her tick and what makes her the way she is. This is something we've only briefly touched upon in previous episodes and had a rather great little ending sequence with her a few weeks ago, but now we're starting to get a lot more of a central focus on her as a character. Last week was far more focused on Knuckleduster, where he finds himself right now and who he really is behind the mask. And I will be honest with you, dear listener, I'm kind of surprised that they aren't building on that more so this week. They are still touching upon it briefly, but it's not like it's the same level of focus as it was last week. We don't see more of him with what we presume to be his wife. We don't see any more of his family. We don't really see him doing anything else in this episode, bar briefly in the beginning bit and towards the end of the episode, where it looks like he's about to go and confront B. This isn't to say that there isn't any kind of hint with what is going on with him or where he is right now in his life. It's just that it's kind of done in a slightly more sleight of hand kind of way. In this episode, he feels a little bit more lucid than he usually is. More often than not, his solution to just about every single problem is to just keep punching it in the face until there is no problem left. And his solution to Popstep's anxiety about this whole performance thing isn't to just tell her to go, get on with it, get over it, rah, 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 or whatever, or to charge headlong into the try and solve the problem. He just says that she needs to just do her best like she always does. I feel that the family episode title from last week is more so a reflection as to how Knuckleduster sees his relationship with both Popstep and Crawler, seeing them as being more like the children that he never had. However, that itself is a whole plot thread and an idea and a concept which can be better discussed at a later point. With that said, like I say, it's not that they don't do anything with him, it's just that the kind of character stuff that they do with him is a little bit more subtle and a little bit more sleight of hand than I think that part of me really wants. I mean, last week we got a nice little insight into who he is, but it felt a little bit too much like a tease for me, particularly bearing in mind how things went this week. But of course, before we get into the main focus of this episode, which is that deep dive into Popstep and to who she is as a character, I think it's a good time to take a moment to talk about the jokes and humour of this episode, which, surprise, surprise, I thought were really on point. We have a villain introduced into this episode, one of our disposable villains who just appears in the background just for the sake of a scene transition, who, let's be honest, is supposed to be Gamara, or rather a play on Gamara. And the moment I saw them appearing on the page, I started to sing the Gamara song, you know, Gamara, Gamara, Gamara is really neat, filled with yummy turtle meat, we all love Gamara. And I just thought it was hilarious, and I looked down and I see the actual gag for the episode, the page, which we have a character that says, "Oh boy, that guy up there, they really look like Git," and then you have someone interrupt them saying, "No, no, no, don't say that name, otherwise we'll get sued," which I thought was a neat little gag. Like, this is how I like it when they use the references, when it feels a little bit more like it's playful, more so than it feels like just a shorthand thing or a little bit more of a nod, as we have in the case in previous episodes when we had pretty much the Avengers but Yakuza show up. Of course, then we get a pivot to the return of Captain Celebrity and his new Japanese hype squad. And there's something that sticks out to me, and it isn't a criticism, but it's something that does make my skin crawl ever so slightly, which is the fact that when they're hyping them up and they're cheering him on, they refer to him as CC. Which, you know, is fair. You know, it's a shorter version of his hero name, Captain Celebrity. They probably don't have space in the speech bubble to write Captain Celebrity, given how hamstring they are with the editing and such. But they don't, again, refer to him as CC. They refer to him as Chris. So you just have a good page or so where people are going, yeah, you go, Chris, yeah, big bro Chris, oh, you're so awesome, Chris, yeah. And it just kind of makes me recoil a little bit when I see this. Like, does anyone else have a kind of similar thing with them when they hear their name in a TV show or see it written in a book? And it just kind of makes your head turn around ever so slightly? Like, recently I started watching 24, and in one of the seasons there is a bad guy called Chris/Christopher. So it's just constantly with Jack Bauer saying, get on the ground, Chris! You're destroying the world, Chris! Turn around, Chris! I'm gonna shoot you! I'm just thinking, please don't shoot me, Mr. Bauer! I'm just eating my whatever it is. I was going to make a joke, but I couldn't think of a hilarious food stuff. But anyway, you get the idea. It was a weird little sequence, but hey, Captain Celebrity's back, and he's being shanghaied into helping with what's the main focus of all this is this week. Like, they're bringing Captain Celebrity in to help with this big, this supermarket relaunch. And he's, to be fair, kind of conflicted about it. He is trying his best to make up from the BS that happened a few weeks ago. Do a service to community, prove that he isn't a shit. But at the same time, he is who he is, and he doesn't want to know how he's kind of doing it for selfish reasons. Like, yeah, he wants to make amends for the stuff that happened a few weeks ago, but at the same time, he's only really going to get involved in all this so that Japanese society as a whole doesn't know that he's a shit, and that his ex-wife I should say, isn't going to take him for every penny he had. So he's going to be doing the good thing, even if it's for generally shitty reasons. But still, I kind of find that kind of funny. The humour in this episode was on point. There was fun little gags from references, even if part of it did make my skin crawl ever so slightly. But that's inadvertently. Wow, the 2 episodes on the bounce, we got something scary for me. Anyway, the great and true narrative focus for this episode is Popstep's invitation to do this gig in the shopping mall that's reopening in town, one which is destroyed in the villain attack a few weeks ago with the fake Godzilla-looking thing. Or whatever it was, a giant lizard monster was blowing stuff up, and the building got destroyed of it, so now they're going to relaunch it, and Popstep is being brought back into the fold. She's going to be doing a big performance there to help sell it off. Or rather, to relaunch it, you get the idea. And I will be honest that when I first started reading this in the episode, part of me thought that it was going to be a trap, that at the end of the episode, we'd have B secretly running things behind the scenes and doing the whole, everything's finally going to plan. That basic scene that you end up seeing in a lot of superhero fiction, but that doesn't seem to be the case. At the end of the episode, we just get B looking at a flyer for this event and just scoffing at it and thinking it's kind of a bit stupid, but she's going to get involved with it and try and, fuck it up for everyone because she's a villain and that's what she does. It's not a trap in its design, it's going to end up turning into a trap later on. This is providing, of course, that Knuckleduster doesn't stop her ahead of time. But anyway, back to the matter of hand. This whole episode, this whole sequence, is designed so as to give us a better insight into Popstep and who she really is. Because we haven't really seen her to any great depth or any great significance since the episode Him. That in that episode was the first time that we got a hint as to who the true person was behind the Popstep persona. We see her as being far more nervous and introverted than the person that we otherwise see her when she's in her superhero mode. Granted, part of this is due to admiration with Crawler and her previous history with him, even though of course he doesn't know about their previous history. But now we get that side of her personality, that nervous, introverted side of her, in a far more compelling focus. Her nervousness isn't just because she likes Crawler. It's because she wants to be seen, but not seen. She doesn't want to have the attention thrown onto her, but at the same time, she still wants that attention because she wants to be a pop star as well as a superhero. So she kind of needs it. So she wants any attention to be put onto her, but not so long that the audience might figure out as to who she really is deep down. That she isn't really this sparky, bubbly person that she pretends to be, and in reality she's kind of just this nervous, clumsy, socially awkward young woman. Which, yeah, sure, some of her fans might find endearing, but, she wants to be a pop star. And those kind of traits don't really get you that far in being a pop star. Oh, sure, it'll help you on a TV talent show. God knows there's a lot of people that won those kind of things purely and simply because, you know, they have the right personality, more so than they have the singing talent. In that kind of world, you need to be extraordinary, and she feels that she will screw things up so terribly at this event, she would just be seen as terrible or just extraordinary. However, thankfully, you know, she does have people to help her. We see Makoto going above and beyond to help build up the event and to be as supportive of Pop Step as possible, and Crawler is there. Let's be honest, Makoto is doing this all because she has ulterior motives of all of this. She wants a good grade for her doctorate. You know, let's be blunt and look at this rather cynically. She's going to probably want to have interviews with Pop Step after the fact, that she can get interviews so that she can get a good grade for a doctorate. That's basically all this is going to end up going. You know, I've been part of these interviews that happen for doctrinal study. I know how focused that the people doing these kind of things can be. So, you know, let's be honest, she's not doing this out of the goodness of her heart. She's doing this because she wants to get something out of it, which is understandable. You know, she might be friends with them, but at the end of the day, she does want to make all her studies actually worthwhile here. So while she is still a good character, much like Captain Celebrity, she's ultimately doing this kind of for selfish reasons, but hey, that just adds a little bit of depth to her character. With that said, in terms of character depth, I do want to end up seeing more so with what they do with Pop Step, because we get a good insight as to who she is as a person and why she is the way she is, but maybe not to quite the extent I really want to. I still think that there's a little bit of me that feels as though we're going over old ground here with this, because we've always had this idea that behind the scenes Pop Step wasn't quite as extroverted as she appears to be when she's in a superhero persona. We see that plainly and simply as to how she looks when she's in her civilian gear. She's not so avant-garde, she's not so performative, she just looks rather plain and ordinary. But we don't really understand as to why she wants to be a pop star, pop idol, vigilante superhero thing. That hasn't really been said to us, and this week it just feels like a case of just reconfirming, oh, by the way, she's just a kind of nervous teenage girl at the end of the day, which, okay, neat, but can we have a little bit more here? Maybe the reason why they're going over old ground in the way that they are doing this week is because, let's face it, we spent like a month and a half with going over goofy crap from the previous few episodes, so, you know, a little bit of a refresher thing. It will be interesting to see how they develop all this going forward. With that said, however, let us get into the negatives. I don't really have that many negatives for this week's review, because a lot of stuff just really works here, and we are in the moment of we're just setting stuff up for this whole mini story arc with this big gig that's happening at this shopping mall. You know, we do get the hint that the girl from last week who had the bees coming out of her you-know-where has gone missing, so what the deal is with that we don't really know, because it's just briefly mentioned in one of the panels, which, okay, sure, I mean, they've served their purpose being creepy and weird. Maybe we'll get any idea as to what happened with her in the future, if we ever do. I think if there is to be a negative, I think the absence of Knuckleduster, given what happened last week, is kind of a little bit weird to me. You know, last week was the moment where it feels like, you know, the cover art for this volume was really going to start coming true. The cover art for this volume is Knuckleduster and Bee looking at each other with a very intent, I'm going to kick your ass look to them. And whilst we have seen a lot of Bee, and we do see a lot of Bee in the next issue or so, Knuckleduster just disappears. He has that cute little moment towards the start of the episode with his surrogate family, and then, well, the surrogate family, of course, being Crawler and Pop Step, but beyond that point, we just don't see him again until the end of the episode, where it looks like he's getting ready to kick Bee's ass. So how they actually balance that with what's happening with Pop Step and Crawler, I really don't know. Are we going to have this really awkward thing where we see Crawler and Bee having this big fight sequence, and then interplay that with what's happening with Pop Step and this gig? I really don't know. That's one way they could end up doing it. I think that it would take something away from both sequences, because I think that certainly what is hinted with Knuckleduster is something that needs time to breathe, and I don't really think you could really do that with, to be blunt, Pop Step's rather high school drama series of events that's happening with her. I think that, of course, that the stuff with Knuckleduster just needed a little bit more time to cook, a little bit more time to see where it's going with that, but I'm sure we'll get more of that in the coming weeks or so. As for the main stuff itself, I think it was all done fairly well. I just feel that maybe we need to get a little bit more insight as to why Pop Step is the way that she is. If it really is just a case of just general nerve, just being of a general nervous disposition, fine, but it would be nice to actually see that rather than just being told it over and over and over again, or just get it hinted to us over and over and over again, which just seems to be the case of much of this episode. With all that said and done, as far as the overview itself is concerned, this was a good episode. I really don't have any major complaints about it. I think that for an episode that's basically setting up for a mini story arc within this particular volume, I think it does a great job with it. I think the humour is really on point, and I like the direction that a lot of stuff is going with this as far as the drama itself is concerned. I want to see more of it, because like I say, it really does feel like they're just hammering in points that we, at this point, pretty much already know. Though, to be fair, like I mentioned previously, we haven't really touched upon Popstep as a character now for a good maybe 7 or 8 weeks. So, you know, for some people, they might need a refresher, particularly bearing in mind that this particular series, when it was coming out in manga form, it might have only been out once a fortnight, so it's going to be even longer, so having a bit of a brief refresher makes sense, even though I do wish there was a little bit something more here, that who kind of hit the ground running with this, rather than just going over old ground over and over again. But that said, yet still a lot of fun, some great gags within it. I did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to see where we go with this. With all that said and done, let's get into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner. Kicking us off, we have Big X1 who says, I didn't expect this one to go where it did. I thought there was a page or two missing when it happened. Well, yeah, thank you for your comment, and yeah, the moment that I'm sure that you're referring to, yeah, it really did come out of left field. It leaves a hell of an impact, that has to be said, but well, I kind of think this is only going to be the tip of the iceberg with some things going forward, so we'll see how all that goes. Next up, we have Taken Name, who says, and I'm just going to say here and now that this is a fairly recent comment, so apologies if I get some of the things back to front of all of this, and my response to this is kind of going to be a little bit fresh, so, you know, I don't get time to think about this and pretend I'm clever. They say that nothing is stronger than family. Jokes aside, I really can't see the spoiler that you're talking about at the end of the in the artwork. I will touch on that in just a moment. The chapter starts with a picture of Knuckleduster with the title family at the bottom, putting two and together. This is about Knuckleduster's family. The photo of Shoga is asking about in the beginning is the same one Knuckleduster as the end of the chapter. Having the B villain appear within the Knuckleduster focus story is breadcrumbs for me as the reader to figure out things out by themselves. That the two characters must be more connected than a normal hero versus villain. That actually just confirms my speculation, thus evolving the story as a whole, making me speculate what is going to happen next and how. Thank you for your comment and thank you for your insight. Now, this is kind of be split into two things. First of all, I'm going to discuss the thing with the spoiler, and then I'm going to discuss the comment. With the spoiler itself, in my particular copy of the volume, bearing in mind that I think this is the 4th edition to it, the 4th revision of it at that, at the end of this chapter, there's a little behind-the-scenes bit which shows a sketch of B, and then underneath it, it just explicitly says a bit about her character, and I'm going to leave it at that. As for the actual episode itself, how it ends up working all this, how it hints to these connections between Knuckleduster and B, is exactly as you put it, Taken Name. This is how the language of this particular manga is working to end up giving these hints and indications. If this was just the case, I'd be fine going, yeah, that's interesting, that's great, that's good, because within the story of itself, that's fine. It's the volume and how it's been presented which is the issue for me, which explicitly ends up saying what the connection between the two of them is in that particular behind-the-scenes bit with the sketch of B, which is the negative that I had with last week's episode. Because the episode itself does everything that Taken Name is doing. It hints as to what's going on perfectly, setting things up as you think it is. Maybe there's something else going on here. You'll only find out by reading more. But then the behind-the-scenes stuff ends up confirming which way it's going. The wind is going with that, which, needless to say, kind of annoy me. And as such, I kind of felt as though that particular comment should have been saved for the end of the volume itself. But still, the episode itself works fine. I don't think the episode itself has a spoiler in it. It's the volume itself that has the spoiler in it immediately after the episode is done, which does annoy me, but still, it's something that probably wasn't, well, it won't have been there when the volume was first released, when the episode was first released. but now it is, and we just have to deal with it. But anyway, thank you for your comments. If you've got any other comments you want for this particular episode or others, let me know in the comment section down below, and you will be read out in a future show. But between then and now, I say thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!